Hello there, friends, and welcome back to more Bravely Default. Last time, we ventured to the northern ends of Eternia and found ourselves here at the Vampire's Castle, where an old friend, well, he is old, but I don't think he's an old friend of ours, Lester De Rosso, the vampire, or Lord De Rosso, he had a quest for us to go to these stone tablets around the world, fight some dragons, and grab these little orbs here of elements. And we've now placed them in here and allowed ourselves to get access to the Vampire Castle. And, well, there's nothing really else exciting for us to do, so I think today we're going to go ahead and go inside the Vampire Castle and see what awaits us. But first things first, of course, we have to tackle Nerende Village. So I think today we're going to be upgrading the Cape Parts Shop in order to get the Special Move Parts MP Recovery Level 4, Confuse Touch, and Confuse Resistance down. Alrighty, with Nerende Village out of the way, let's go ahead and head inside.
It's freezing in here, even colder than it is outside.
Look at all those paintings. Did we just stumble into an art gallery?
They all have a sort of forlorn look to them.
Hello, welcome to the Vampire Castle. This dungeon is quite interesting, but first things first, I want to go down here to the very bottom left and grab our hidden chest of this dungeon. Yes, I know I'm spoiling the surprise already, but hey, Bloodblade. This weapon is a little interesting. It is a magic sword that, when used, can trigger the Drain ability. And, this is an item that is pretty notorious in the Bravely Default community as being a very powerful tool, especially for certain job setups that I'm definitely going to get to at a later point. But welcome to the Vampire Castle. This dungeon is a bitch. Like, oh my goodness. This dungeon is a bit annoying. Mostly because the enemies here are not friendly at all. Honestly, I don't really have a general strategy for how I want to deal with these guys. The Cerberuses here can counter physical attacks, and most of my team is physical focused, so if I just kind of go in auto battle, I'm sure things are going to get out of my hands really quickly. So I think what I'm going to do is utilize Agnes, and let's go ahead and utilize Agnes as a bit of a test subject here. Let's see if we can actually damage them with healing magic. And I guess Ring-a-Bell, I'll pop one on our group just in case things go awry. And then Tiz, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Nothing Ventured. There we go. I'm having Idia trigger Karai on Tiz here to hopefully draw some aggro. Hopefully. Hellfire. Oh my goodness, look at that damage. That's crazy. Nothing Ventured still procs, but he still counters. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it heals them. Okay, so they're not undead. Upon consideration, I think it'd probably be best if we just get out of here. Oh my goodness. Ultrasonic Wave, that has a potential paralysis, I believe. I think it's paralysis. Oh my goodness, there goes Idia. Can we get away, please? No? How unfortunate. So, yeah, the enemies here are, how should I say? A little funky, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Yeah, so, because of that, I think I am going to be avoiding as many encounters as I can. Not because I don't want to worry about game overs, I don't, but the biggest reason is because there isn't really any reason for me to worry about... Oh, hey, it's already on negative 100%. There isn't really any reason for me to prioritize enemy encounters here. They don't give the greatest amount of EXP. It's a decent amount, but it's honestly not worth it. There are a lot of enemies in this dungeon, and pretty much all of them are a pain in my goddamn ass. So, I think I'm going to avoid them for right now. Ooh, blue chest. Though I will come back for them as I'm trying to complete these journal entries, and of course I will need their entries. But we'll save that for a later date. First things first, let's go ahead and start exploring, because we don't have to worry about enemies as I've turned off encounters. So we have, a perfect amount of time just to kind of explore. There's a dragon fang right there. So the Vampire Castle. This dungeon is one of the largest dungeons in the game, with the most amount of floor, with some of the most amount of floors in the game. Not the most amount, but pretty up there. And it also has its own unique gimmick. Well, I guess I wouldn't say it's a gimmick, but it is something interesting about this dungeon.
My, what a large portrait. Is that Lord DeRosso?
His wife was sure an attractive one. Oh, and it says something under the painting. Lester, eldest son of the House of DeRosso, future clergyman of the Crystal Adventists and cardinal of the Crystal Orthodoxy, born in the land of Eternia on a cold winter's day. So, that's his mother, not his beautiful young wife. And that little baby is Lord DeRosso.
Clergyman? Of the Crystal Adventists?
Is something the matter, Agnes?
The Crystal Adventists were the predecessors of the Crystal Orthodoxy. It is now known as the Old Faith, but it hasn't been practiced in over 2,400 years. How could he have been a member of the Adventist clergy? According to this portrait, Lord DeRosso is incredibly old, even ancient.
Yes, indeed. For I was born of these frozen lands in a time some 2,400 years from this day.
And this portrait?
I was but an infant, as you can see. This is a reproduction, however. The original was lost long ago to fire.
And what of the part that reads, Clergyman of the Crystal Adventists and Cardinal of the Crystal Orthodoxy?
Yes. As Wind Vestal, you would be expected to take interest in such matters. But here I delve into the matter of the Old Faith and the Orthodoxy. Allow me to tell of the founding of this land. As you may well know, this land had long been ruled by the Crystal Orthodoxy. However, 15 years passed, the Templar rose up and occupied their lands. Thus was the Duchy of Eternia born. Or so I expect you have been taught. However, the Templar did not found a new state. In truth, he restored an ancient dynasty.
He did?
Long before the Crystal Orthodoxy ruled this land, it was known as the Kingdom of Eternia. In a time 2,400 years past, Eternia was a bountiful land blessed with 4 distinct seasons. The highlands were not as lofty as they are today. People and ideas flowed freely from other lands. The kings of Eternia were protectors of the Earth Crystal and the Crystal Adventists, ruling in peace for generations. To the west lay the castle of the House of DeRosso, hereditary dukes of Eternia with royal blood in their veins. Relations with the royal family were good, and ever did the kings of Eternia treat the dukes of our house with kindness. In return, the House of DeRosso did faithfully serve generations of Eternian kings.
So, we, in this dungeon, in the Vampire Castle, get basically a huge lorddom. Throughout the dungeon, Lord DeRosso will be discussing paintings with us and giving us a history on not only Eternia, but the world itself for the past 2,400 years and how it's evolved. It's a really cool concept, and if we inspect the painting again...
A family portrait by Lord DeRosso. Little did he know of the approaching maelstrom. Such tragedy that we could not possibly fathom.
There's some new dialogue. Obviously, we can't continue. Wow. Could not speak there. Obviously, we cannot continuously inspect it as they'll give us the same response, but it's really cool that you can inspect it a second time to get new dialogue. So we're going to be navigating this dungeon and eventually coming across certain paintings where we will begin discussing history with DeRosso. There's some Hermes shoes. Now, we already have, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of those, but these are very important. Make sure to grab those if you haven't already. Actually, we got the shoes. Now, we already had the sandals, which were increased agility by 10, but these shoes are increased agility by 20. I'm actually going to go ahead and equip that on Yes. I think on Yes will be who I'm going to equip that on. That increases your agility by a crap ton, and I want to make sure Agnes is the fastest member of my team for future endeavors. But this dungeon is quite large, and there are a lot of treasure chests. Of course, if you are dealing with the monsters, there are some pretty dangerous beasties here, but thankfully we won't have to worry about that. But there's a lot of new accessories here. Let's check out the Black Belt. Raises critical hit rate. If you're not utilizing katanas like I am on my main attackers, that might be a good accessory to have, as it'll increase your crit rate by quite a bit. But thanks to katanas, my crit rate is already fairly high. Now, I might be wrong here. I haven't studied art and paintings in a long time, but personally, I think this is supposed to be based off of, like, Italian or Romanian Gothic art. I might be wrong on that, but it's very pretty, I will say. But let's go ahead and inspect it.
What magnificent vestments. This must be none other than Lord DeRosso.
'Tis a portrait of my ordainment as Cardinal of the Orthodoxy. I was as yet... No, let us move on to other matters. I was born of the House of DeRosso, hereditary Dukes of Eternia. Blessed was my youth. My parents showered affection upon me, and I was beloved by the people. And the king bestowed favor upon me as well. Upon royal recommendation, I was made a cleric of the Crystal Adventists, the Old Faith, in my 19th year. I devoted my body and soul to my clerical duties, for king, for kingdom, for faith. Sleep became an oft-missed luxury. But before long, a new tide began sweeping through the Crystal Adventists. There were those who wanted the clergy to control the 4 crystals of Luxemdark, rather than local monarchies and temples. That belief formed the core of the Crystal Orthodoxy. The Eternian royal family, keepers of the Earth Crystal, immediately assented to this new way. I soon found myself appointed to the position of Cardinal in the Orthodoxy. Me, a mere cleric. Cardinal DeRosso. Those were my days of glory. Even now, the mere sound of the then new title is dear to me. The Old Faith was remade entirely into the Crystal Orthodoxy, and the decision was made to elect a Grand Patriarch to rule. Thereupon, cardinals throughout the world gathered for a conclave to elect the first Grand Patriarch. Amid the conclave's maelstrom, I was approached by a cardinal who wished for me to vote for his choice. I suppose it was my youth and sincerity that made me reject the notion out of hand. But that was my downfall, for I was forced from the position of cardinal by the fraudulently elected Grand Patriarch. I had been but fervent in my beliefs and ideals. What I did only for the Orthodoxy, and for the people of this world.
The Old Faith and the Orthodoxy. The Kingdom of Eternia and the Duchy. That was all a bit hard to follow.
I agree. There are no major differences in teachings between the Old Faith and Orthodoxy. They both revere the 4 crystals. I have heard that the Adventists gave way to the new and truer ideas of the Orthodoxy and faded away.
No wonder the Old Faith was abandoned.
Yet there is more to the story, for history is not more than accounts recorded by the victorious. To solidify their power, the victors showered contempt upon the vanquished. so it was, those who held the reins of power within the Orthodoxy relentlessly pressed for the Adventists' eradication. No one recalls the words of the vanquished, if the victorious write them out of history. 'Tis as if they had never existed.
I'd been taught that the battle between the two faiths had been fierce, and in its wake, devastation persisting to this day covered all the lands.
That is an uncharacteristically accurate account for the Orthodoxy, save for their false reckoning of time. It was after the Orthodoxy had begun ruling the world that the endless conflict with the Adventists began. I should know, for I was there to bear witness firsthand.
Lord DeRosso, how could you possibly be that old?
So we're beginning to see the sprinklings of what exactly the Orthodoxy was all about back then. There was corruption from the very beginning within that faith, which does give Brave's decision a lot more merit than initially expected. Lord DeRosso's epic oratory. Ring a bell. You were sawing logs almost the entire time Lord DeRosso was speaking. Sawing logs? She means you were sleeping. So was that obvious? Obvious? You were snoring like a bear. I was? You'll have to forgive me. Even I know that's really rude. That it is. Even if that was an incredibly long bit of an oratory. That's right, Ring a Bell. You were really rude. I mean, your snoring even woke me up. What? You mean you were sleeping too, idiot? So we got a split in the group here within the history nerds and the not so history nerds. I definitely would be in the former group. I love history. I love it so much.
Lord DeRosso's ordainment portrait.
From the old faith to the Orthodoxy, Lord DeRosso's fate was sealed upon his ordainment.
So far, what a pretty tragic story for DeRosso, but unfortunately not a very uncommon one. Corruption within the faith or governments in general, and those who do not agree with the person in power, they get thrown out. Let's move on. But touching upon what I just said earlier about how much I love history, this is the kind of thing, especially in video games and stories in general, that I love. I love lore dumps utilized in a very interesting way like this. I mean, yes, it's just a bunch of cutscenes, but hey, we get to talk to a very cool character that has an awesome design and really cool voice and has a lot to tell, so I'm all for it. So we got the Thole, going backwards there. Soul of Thamasa. This increases intelligence by 20 if you're utilizing magic damage like Arcanists or Black Mages, or Time Mages even. Go ahead and put that on, it's very potent. Trust me, I'll make sure to utilize it at some point as well. So let's go ahead and move forward. I don't think there's any more loot on this floor, maybe? Let's go ahead and check around. I think there's one over here. Is there? There's nothing here. Alright, well then let's move on.
This one shows a castle in flames.
A large army surrounds it. It looks as if it could fall at any moment.
Is this not this very castle? See, this is the western corridor right here.
There's another castle burning in the distance. It's near where Eternian's central command is today.
So then, that's the Orthodoxy's head temple in flames?
Nay, the distant castle in flames belonged to the King of Eternia, and the castle in the fore. 'Tis the abode of my family, the House of DeRosso.
But why? Why would such a terrible thing?
The Kingdom of Eternia was suddenly beset by a great host from another land. We would later come to know that it was a four-state coalition sent by order of the Crystal Orthodoxy. They had been told the King of Eternia sought a return to Adventism, and was arming for war against the Orthodoxy. The Grand Patriarchy used this fiction to order a great muster of forces from across the lands. Alas, I failed to heed the many warning signs. I rejected the scheming Cardinal's choice for Grand Patriarch. But he succeeded in luring votes from other factions, and his became the ruling faction of the Grand Patriarchy. It was they who wished to establish Crystal Orthodoxy as the uncontested world religion. Under their orders, the castle of the Eternian King was besieged. It fell in mere weeks. Before long, the great host was at the gates of our castle, and my father lay brutally murdered. The water supply was poisoned, and the Orthodoxy's forces drew an ironclad ring around the castle. By then, the castle sheltered naught but the elderly, the young, the wounded. There was no hope of resistance. I was forced to sue for peace, even offering my own mother as hostage per their demands. Yet that failed to break the siege. The commoners who had placed their faith in my family and me slowly starved to death. It was then that a letter arrived from a man. That man was the Cardinal, who had sought to influence my vote. The Fiend was now the officer in charge of the attack. He wrote that he would not accept my surrender. Such was the hatred he bore for me. Such hatred that he was willing to let countless innocents die. My mother had been murdered. Our castle was consumed in flames. That is the painting you see here.
How could the Orthodoxy do such a thing?
This all reminds me of what happened during the Great Plague.
Indeed. Perhaps the Templar and I are not so very different. To be betrayed by what you believe in. To have your family and those you protect murdered. Though we do not see eye to eye, perhaps it is a shared sorrow that binds us.
Lord De Rosa's castle siege painting.
Such a tragic tale.
So I guess with these paintings, we're starting to be painted a picture that was unintentional, but we're beginning to be shown what exactly the Crystal Orthodoxy was like, and it's not looking good. I mean, it was the dominant religion that had worldwide control, and it wanted nothing more than to keep that control. And the people who were in charge of it went power hungry and were very destructive to the point where they were willing to kill thousands of people just to satiate their own hatred and bloodlust. Raise this dwarven gloves right here raises dexterity, but it's a tale as old as time, as it's something that we have seen in the real world as well. While I don't think, obviously, to a much lesser extent, but there are cases of the governments and religions utilizing their immense strength to wipe out their competitors. Hyper bracers are basically just better versions of the power bracers, and I'm actually going to equip that on Idia, as I want her to have as much strength as I possibly can. But it's a very sad tale, and it makes me like the De Rosa a lot, because he is someone who's lived through all of this pain and suffering, and is able to tell the tale and bring about, I guess the best way of putting it is bring about awareness. And I mean, he was on the Council of Six, so he must have helped Brave utilize his army to remove the Crystal Orthodoxy from the Eternian lands, so maybe he got the last laugh in the end. But regardless, let's go ahead and check out this final painting right here, at least for today.
Look!
Such fierce flames.
Though I wish not to remember that day, it is indelibly etched upon my mind.
How did you survive?
The Orthodoxy lay siege yet would accept no surrender. My mother, father, relatives, and my people lay dead. It was then I set our castle ablaze. But as the flames began to lick my body, something slipped into me. Betrayed by the precepts I believed in, was I not bitter? Robbed of my beloved homeland, my dearest of kin, my people slain. Amid such despair, was I content to simply welcome death? Nay, I heard a voice. Accept me, and I shall grant life everlasting. Though it shall be filled with grief, thou shalt have all eternity to wreak vengeance upon thine enemies. Did I forge a dark pact with some fiendish entity that day? Or was it a rebirth, triggered by a future me reaching back to the past? Panicked upon failing to find my body, the Orthodoxy chose to denounce my family and me as ghoulish vampires. Thus have I been living an immortal existence ever since.
Then the name Vampire Castle is...
A lie that has been perpetrated by the Orthodoxy for some 2,400 years. Though it is true I am immortal, I am no vampire. I find the smell of blood too revolting to ever drink it. Having said that, I have done naught to quell the rumors. In truth, I endeavored to embellish them. My ability to transform myself into a bat and grow these fangs are the fruits of many years. Long, long years of effort. Tell me, O Vestal of the Wind, what does the Crystal Orthodoxy have to say about the passing of the first Grand Patriarch?
He chose the second Grand Patriarch and prayed for peace and the well-being of the faithful as he passed peacefully from this world.
Passed peacefully from this world, you say? I know the truth to be far different.
What do you mean?
The first Grand Patriarch was assassinated, along with his Archbishop, the man who had been my bane. The assassin himself tells you this. There is no other truth. That was when I forsook this land. Soon after, sightings of the vampire Lester de Rosso began to crop up throughout the world. I became a veritable Duke of Darkness, forging ties with those bearing hatred toward the Orthodoxy, and those it had oppressed. I was the enemy of man, the hated and feared vampire. But more than that, I was known as the arch-enemy of the Orthodoxy. And after some 500 years, a fateful encounter with one whom you all know well. No, let us leave the matter for another time.
The portrait depicting Lord de Rosso's immortality.
He was granted everlasting life. He can't ever die.
So, it looks like in the end, even though he's had a tragic tale, Lester got his revenge. He got the last laugh in the end, and I find it really cool that he isn't an actual real vampire. Now, the reason why I say this is because, personally, I'm not a big fan of vampires. I've always found them a little creepy, but pretty cool, but they're not my favorite creatures. And I just love the sort of idea that vampires are a known mythos or creature in this land, and Lester has been denounced as one, but in reality, he's not. He just took on the title because he liked it, and it worked, and it struck fear into the hearts of those who were in the Orthodoxy and worshipped the Grand Patriarch at the time. It's a cool idea, and I love it so much. Lester is easily one of my favorite characters, and we have a lot more to talk with him. So, next time on Bravely Default, we're going to be continuing our scaling of the Vampire Castle and discussing more paintings with Lester. Maybe we'll find out some more lore about the land. So, with that said, I'll see you soon. I'm alive. Somehow. When I woke, my body refused to respond. I think I was lying down. My eyelids felt as though they were glued shut. A familiar voice grated in my ear. Of course you'll recover. Just whom do you think you are addressing, If I have orders to fix him, I'll see he's fixed. As much as I may enjoy his current state, he'll live, though I'll be sure he suffers for having humiliated me. The days that followed were hell. His breath reeked as he spoke. Oh, does it hurt? I just gave you the most painful drug I know, and here you can't move a muscle to stop me. Such a shame, isn't it? Someday I will carve this pig apart. So help me. I awoke to familiar engine noise and the smell of oil, but sleep soon found me once more. When next I woke, I was floating in some kind of liquid. I could feel it bitter in my mouth, stinging my nose and filling my lungs. I was drowning and tried to struggle, but my body still refused to obey. I quickly slipped back into darkness. A cold, unpleasant voice woke me. A nasty bit of work, this. Torture under the guise of treatment. It was wise to transport him here when we did. A few more days and, well... Worry not. I'll have him back good as he was. You have my guarantee. The voice next turned to me. And how are we feeling? My eyes opened, stung by the light and medicated fluid. Today is the 24th. You've been out a month and a week, but no worry not. None of your correspondence seems especially pressing. See? He held up a slip of paper to the tank. Bring the orphan to the Inn of Origin, it read. What does it mean? He asked. Is it code? I can't make sense of it. It made little sense to me too, but I felt relief at knowing the boy was all right. That wasn't your only inscrutable message. I drifted in and out as he read more, catching only snippets. Earth crystal, grand ship, engine room. Some days, or was it weeks, later, the liquid was drained from the tank, and I was left to stave off gravity with atrophied legs. Buck up. You'll be back to your old self given a week. I made well sure of that. With that final dismissive comment, he turned and left. I was moved to a civilian hospital to recover. I trained back up to full stamina in 6 days, mostly out of spite. No trace remained of the burns I assume covered my body, and he'd reversed any effects of whatever that pig had injected me with while he was at it. It galls me to say, but the man does good work.